Oh shit. Here we go again.
Hello and welcome out to this episode of Outbreak Gamers. I'm your host, David Anthony. WebDave is my gamer tag, and I am here with the legend, Newf Nukem. Newf, how you doing, sir?
I am good. Thanks for having me. And I guess I can't do an intro without doing this. Boom, boom, kaboom.
Yeah, I
Noof is in
love
the
it.
room.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I do appreciate you coming on today. I mean, you've just come off almost a 2-hour podcast yourself already today, so you
That's right.
got one under the belt. So I appreciate you doing it, man. You warmed up, ready to go? Got some fresh coffee,
Yeah, man. Well, we all do
energy
this for the
drinks.
same reason because we love doing it. We love gaming. It is a passion. It is a hobby. And that's why we can pull through stuff like this because, again, we just love doing it. We love chatting about a hobby that is, I think, is still largely underappreciated in society. People don't seem to really get gaming. I mean, we do. We've kind of grown up with it, but a lot of people still look at it as a child's toy or it's nonsense. And gaming's grown up a lot. We've grown up with it. It's changed a lot for sure. But like I said, that's why we do this stuff because we love it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I can tell you're very passionate about it by your banners and posters behind you. This is awesome, and of course your hat too as well. Got the
Hmm.
Xbox logo on it.
Yeah.
I'm an old guy, the gamer. Atari for me. That's where
Yeah.
I started off.
Well, I
So
mean, we're probably about the same age. I'm pretty close. I'm 46.
there you go. I am 58.
Okay, you got me beat by a bit. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I was just coming in on the tail end of the Atari generation. So, but
Yeah,
yeah, we'll get into that.
yeah. There sounds good. Sounds good. But yeah, no, I got a baby face and an old body, but
Well, I was gonna say you certainly don't look like you're 58. Is that what you said?
yep.
Hot
I
damn, you
appreciate that.
you
Thank you.
definitely don't look it, brother. I'd never guess. I thought we were pretty well in the same. I don't judge people by a bit of gray because I know people that are in their 30s that got lots of gray, but yeah, you definitely don't look that age.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm counting down day. I guess the years to retirement now. So that's yeah, good times. But let's start things off with I guess I almost like to start this off with like maybe what was like the first job you had when you were like a baby Newf Nukem? Like what was your first either job or education
Sure.
that you like
Well, my
talking
first job was in the tourism industry.
about?
I was a deckhand on a boat, and I would basically, excuse me, offload like luggage and stuff for the passengers, and I'd tell them a little bit about some of the scenery they were witnessing and things like that. And it was kind of like a chaperone, and it was kind of a jack of all trades kind of thing. And then I'd spend part of my day, doing like odds and end jobs on this particular island, and I would come back on the boat in the evenings and stuff like that. It was an interesting job. It was very challenging for me at the time, who was very green around the ears, around the collars, you say. But it was fun and it was interesting. And I remember, I think my pay was at the time, I think it was $5 an hour,
Wow.
5.25 maybe at best, I think it was. And the first thing I ever bought with my first job, the first money I put towards was actually a Sega Saturn.
Ah, very good, very good. Nice, nice, nice. So, what did you go on from jobs from there? Is I mean, that does sound that's pretty interesting. I've
I've
never had
had a
anybody.
wide array of jobs, like too many to even get into. I've
Me too.
definitely I tried a lot of things.
Hmm.
Jack of all trades, master of none for the most part. And I tried stuff like trades and stuff like that, and never found that it wasn't my calling. It wasn't, I'm more of a people person, obviously a very chatty kind of guy, very personable. So I'm not afraid of hard work. I work hard and pretty much everything I apply myself to for the most part.
Hmm.
Because I know when it comes to my channel, I don't work hard enough. But but like, yeah, I've had a lot of different jobs, but I guess one of the ones that was most translatable, and certainly people pick up on this all the time, was up until now. Right now, I currently work I'm a team sports manager at a retail store,
Nice.
and I enjoy that quite a bit. I get to stay involved with sports, and I get to know the community and stuff like that. But the job prior to was one of my dream jobs, and it kind of came crashing down around me. But for over 4 years, I was a drive show host and a morning show host at the local radio station. So I
Nice.
really enjoyed that, but our management changed and they had a different change of plans for me. And I ended up getting pushed out, took a year off, sort of in a mental recovery state. And then I just kind of, this other job fell into my lap and I got the respect that I right from the get-go, and I was given responsibilities. And like I said, gaming, sports, music, I mean, I have a lot of hobbies that aren't just this. Yeah, people can't tell by looking at me because I'm kind of a bit of a hefty guy, but I do like to stay active. I like to work out from time to time, and I play lots of sports whenever my body and timing allows. So, but that's it. Yeah, radio, man. And people always say sometimes when I do podcasts, they go, Newf, you sound like you've kind of been in radio or whatnot. And I said, well, that's because I have. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. You know what? That's funny. Paths kind of crossed on that. I was program director for a local rock radio station.
Well, how
For
about
the
that?
Cromwell Radio group for about 5 years. Loved
Mhm.
it. Had but a lot of times people are surprised when you say didn't get paid a lot of money, even though
Oh,
PD. And it's like they're thinking, oh well, all these people like Bob and Tom and all these famous people, Lex and Terry, and all these different people that
mhm.
make a lot of money. It's like, yeah, they're syndicated radio. That's a big difference.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no,
Larger
there
market
isn't a
maybe.
lot of money in radio. That's a misconception. You do it because you love it, and that's
Yes.
the biggest part.
Yeah, exactly. And I loved it. It was a lot of fun. I mean,
Me too.
tons of time and lots of concerts, and got to meet all sorts of cool people and do lots of
Yeah.
cool interviews. It was a lot of fun. But when the local GameStop, I used to go in there all the time, and the manager at the time, he needed an assistant manager, and he
Mhm.
offered me a position that was like, this is twice as much money as I'm making now. And I'm like, I'll take it. So the next 12 years, I was, GameStop manager. So, I'm with you. I
Well, I can tell you
totally
right
get
now
that.
that the money that I'm making as the retail sports manager, team department manager, is
Mhm.
money that I would have never seen in radio. I mean, as a matter of fact, when I took this retail job, the guy who owns the store paid me more on day one than I did in the 4 years I was at the station.
Wow.
So I was like, yeah, there's definitely something wrong with this picture. And I busted my ass for the station, but it wasn't good enough.
Right.
So, it is what it is. It's something that I sour grape about, I'm sure,
Well,
because why wouldn't you? When you're
of
passionate about something
course.
and you loved it and you kind of get done dirty, and even the
Yep.
people in the community say, man, that was dirty because the community loved you, but apparently somebody at the head office didn't. So there
Right.
you go.
Well,
Yeah.
and sometimes the markets are fickle. They'll like,
Hmm.
you're the it guy, the it person for a while, and then like, somebody has a meeting and they're like, well, this other station's done this and
Well,
their key
we
ratings are
ended.
going up.
That's kind of funny
So,
because you said you were a program director, and
yep.
see the program director that I had, he came in and he was a different one than the guy that hired me.
Mhm.
The guy who hired me, he liked my personality. He liked what I brought to the table. This other guy was very formal, and I really don't think he liked the fact that I was one of the few people who could fire up a microphone and legitimately spiel stuff without ums and ahs and
Mhm.
stuttering. Like I could do it without script.
Yeah.
I spent the best part of my stuff not scripting my shows, but everybody's different. I like more having that live feel where you could have a few mistakes here and there, but it felt like there was a real person behind a mic, not somebody that just read everything off perfectly and didn't sound like a real conversationalist. So I don't think they like that. But anyway, like I said, I could sit here and go on about all
No,
day, but yeah.
but especially for me being in the radio as well too, it's fascinating, because a lot of people, don't realize this stuff. Like I did a live show, but then I actually did two other shows on different formats at the station because we had
Hmm.
7 stations in one building, and I would record can
Yeah.
those, like, you have a little allotment of time and record little local events, and
Yeah.
to the listener, I was like live on the air and
That's right.
taking in talking about the new events and things going on in the town, and it took me 20 minutes to record a 4-hour show. And then
Mhm.
I record another one, then I ended up doing commercials the rest of the day, and it was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but people just they think, well, he's just back in the studio and you get to spin disc, and it's like, yeah,
That's the
Dr.
illusion,
Johnny
right?
Fever, we were not. So yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I get that a lot. I totally understand that. Well, let's kind of, I guess, turn the page into what we're here about, because the name of the show, gamers, and you're definitely a gamer. So how did you get started in gaming, man? What was your first experience in gaming?
Like I said, it goes way back to the 80s, and I would say it was in the 85, 86 is when I was of that age to kind of really start taking interest in it. And some of my friends, they had the Nintendo Entertainment System, and other guys had the Sega Master System. And I don't know what it was, but I gravitated to the Sega platform. Started with the Master System. Of course, it came with Jungle Hunt or Safari Hunt, I think it was, sorry, and Hang On, built into the console, and they had the light gun and all those fantastic games. And then I got into Shinobi, and and that game was just dynamite at the time. Playing Shinobi, I remember, those the spaces in between the levels that you're throwing the ninja stars and stuff was so cool. And Sega just had really bright, vibrant graphics. Of course, they just didn't have the properties at the same time, and I know they had distribution problems in Canada, especially because they were distributed oddly by a toy company called Tonka, who many people might know. But anyway, I started with the Sega Master System. I absolutely adored the thing, and then it was just a natural progression into the Sega Genesis, which really I'd say was the groundbreaker for me, because then I was a little bit older. I'd really got invested, and when the Genesis came out, it was like nothing. Like, it just blew my mind. I remember booting up Altered Beast. I was one of legitimately, and people may not believe me when I say this, but I was legitimately one of the first people in Canada to own a Sega Genesis. I mean, because this is long before we had YouTube and we had websites and marketing. You basically knew because you were in the loop, or you read gaming magazines, which of course I did. I read a lot of gaming magazines, including EGM and Game Pro, Nintendo Power, Next Gen magazine, computer game, what's it, computer gaming, something I forget the name of it, but there was I read pretty much every gaming book that you could pretty much read. I was in the loop as far as you could be in the loop back in the day. And that's what our information was already 2 or 3 months old, right? Because magazines always had to be behind the curve. They had to try to get previews in advance, otherwise but anyway, Genesis was amazing. Then you get stuff like the sports. When this EA Sports was a game changer, because when EA came out, I remember, Blake, I went from Blades of Steel on the NES, and I did have the NES as well, and Blades of Steel was my jam, and Double Dribble and all games like that. You know what I mean? Love those stuff. Of course, you had what do you call it, Tecmo Bowl, and all those great games. And then Genesis comes out, and I remember playing NHL hockey. Of course, I'm Canadian, right? Hockey's in my blood. And it blew my mind. I was like, this crap is just amazing. And it went on from there. Games like Road Rash and Afterburner and Revenge of Shinobi. Oh my God, still one of my classics to this day. Ghouls and Ghosts. Strider came out first. I think it was the first 8 megabit or 16 megabit cartridge. We used to tout that back in the day, right? The size of the cartridges. And I paid like $120 Canadian for that. And people whine about the game prices today. And I go, dude, were you around back then? Because I paid way more for N64 games than I ever did for the games today. It's insane. People seem to simply forget that we got leeched back in the day for these things.
Oh yeah.
But that's just how things change. What one value is today is what somebody else thinks is, like I don't mind dropping $860 Canadian in 2 weeks on a PSVR 2 because I think it's worth it. I love VR. And but some people may argue with that, and they say it's too. I know it's expensive. It hurts, but anyway, I'm off on a tangent. That's how easy it goes. But yeah, back to the Genesis, man. That was a game changer for me, and then it just kept going from there.
Yeah, well, I tell you, this show is designed to, you can go off any direction you want to. So don't worry about it, man. That's all good. This is, like I said, it's a conversational podcast. So I enjoy going, either down memory lane or your perspective on certain things as we go, because I agree with you. Like Joe Montana sports talk football.
Oh my God,
man, that was, to me, that was like, oh my God. And Tommy Lasorda
baseball,
still one of the best to this day, I think.
Yes, Tommy Lasorda, but then when they had the sports talk and the graphics got way better, and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Rambo 3, Arnold Palmer Golf. Oh my God, Arnold Palmer Golf. I played the crap out of that.
Yep.
Yeah, like I said, Genesis really holds weight in my heart. Yeah.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I'm still.
I had Super Nintendo too, but I never gravitated to Super Nintendo in the way that I did with Genesis. There were some great games. I mean, I'll never forget when Donkey Kong Country came out from Rare, and how that just blew my mind. I'm like, this stuff looks how does this even possible on a 16-bit console, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%, man. It was some good stuff, man. Good stuff. Early gaming. I mean, it's like I mean, my kids are
Hmm.
grown up now, but like when Donkey Kong Country came out, my son was like 4 years old, and he would
Hmm.
call it Donkey Tong because he couldn't pronounce Donkey Kong right. I mean, he was little. He still
Mm,
gets mad at me every time. I'm like 10 podcasts I've mentioned that, and he
yeah.
hates it every time I do. But I love you, son.
Well,
But
at least you didn't call him Dickie Kong.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Double ball cone. But no, he loved it. So I get that. For him, that was his start. For me, it was Atari, and these games. Oh my god,
Mm,
you pay $100 for a cartridge at like
yeah.
Woolsey Sports or whatever. It was crazy. Toys and
We didn't
Sports.
have to deal with microtransactions and all of that
Mhm.
leeching, though. That's the one good
Yes,
thing. You had a complete package. That was the game. There was no more to it. There was no DLC, nothing coming. That was it. They had to make sure this stuff worked too. That's when they legitimately paid. They used to pay more testers back in those days than some studios got entire personnel.
yeah, yeah.
Right?
You're right. It was crazy, crazy. I got like nieces and nephews that like today just don't they don't get it. They're like, all these old games are so old, and they have their play on their tablets or whatever. I'm like, but if it wasn't for this,
Yes.
you wouldn't
You
have
would have
this.
that.
You
Yep.
wouldn't have what you're playing now. And
Hmm.
it's that's why I can appreciate the journey we've all been on.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's pretty awesome. So what gaming did you kind of get into? After that, I mean, as you were growing up and getting older,
Yeah,
what
like I said,
platforms?
from Genesis, it gravitated. I kind of passed over the 32X part because
Mhm.
I was saving my money for the Saturn. I'm like, why do I want a
Yeah.
lesser version of the Saturn, right?
Yep.
And I never really got into the Sega CD. I wanted one, but it was really expensive at the time, and there was just nothing that jumped out and grabbed me outside of. There was a few games like Sonic CD, but a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it was those full motion video games like Sewer Shark and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what, it
Like
looks
trap.
cool, but it's just not, for the price and everything. I just kind of got out of that. I had Super Nintendo and then N64 and stuff. But I think the next game changer, legitimately after Genesis, was the Dreamcast,
Yes.
which is
Oh
one of
god,
the
that's a
most iconic revolutionary consoles in the industry. I mean, this console, first of all, it still looks good today, even though it
yes.
sounds legitimately like a 747 is taken off when you boot up a disc. But outside of that, I mean, Sega was so ahead of its time. They had the modem built in,
Yep.
the VMU things, even though they ate batteries like crazy. But the little VMU was so cool. Great way to have a memory thing. And, the controller was awesome. It was built well. It just oozed like Sega did everything right and should have, by all means, taken the industry by storm. But the bad taste was left in a lot of fans' mouths. And this is even before the internet. I
Mhm.
mean, back in the day, maybe the internet would have saved the Dreamcast,
Yeah.
because we could have touted it and promoted it and talked about it like we do on all of our podcasts now, but we didn't have that luxury. Sega was left on their own. And like I said, the damage had been done. And not getting all the third party support as well as we know that EA backed out on those guys after the
Mhm.
Sega Saturn era. And they decided, and that's where Sega and 2K Sports came about. And 2K Sports, as well as I still love them today, they're not the same as they were in the Sega era. When it was Sega
Right.
Sports 2K, they were just on another level. I mean, when you look at Allen Iverson, NBA 2K, oh my God, and the NFL 2K series, how they basically destroyed Madden. It was unbelievable. That's when competition was really driving the industry in the right direction, because you had multiple sports games out there pushing each other to be better, and now they've grown a bit stagnant, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But that's another conversation. But yeah, the Dreamcast was just unbelievable. Virtua Fighter 3TB, Sega Rally. You had Dead or Alive on there. You had Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi, Power Stone. You had Code Veronica on there, like one of the best Resident Evil games that came out at the time. Hopefully, they make a remake of that one too, by the way.
Yep.
There was just, the list goes on. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
anybody who's ever owned a Dreamcast talks about it in this reverence. And yeah, some of the games don't hold up as well today as they did back then, but a lot of them are instant classics and still. I mean,
Mhm.
Sonic Adventure.
Yes.
Like, wow, how that
Yep.
went. The first decent Sonic game that transitioned from that 2D sprite-based graphics. Just amazing, man. I can't say enough about Dreamcast.
I'm with you. Soul Calibur to me was the game
Oh.
that just I would sit and put it on the demo mode where we just
Mhm.
have your fighter do his little moves, like with
Yeah.
motion capture. and I would
I
literally
felt
watch
like
that
that,
for
yeah,
hours.
and I felt like that was the first console that really started to like bridge the gap between the arcade experience
Mhm.
and the home, where
Yeah.
it was virtually non-existent. Where it's a 16-bit eras in between didn't quite get there. They were close, but they just didn't have the same memory capacity and all that sort of stuff to handle arcade ports accurately. They were not bad, but not quite there.
Right. Do you think that, and this is obviously it's
Mhm.
hindsight's 2020, but do you think, in your opinion, because a lot of people, some people think it would have helped them, some people think it wouldn't have mattered, but if they had gone ahead and made it where it would have played DVD movies in that, because that was one of the big attractions for the PlayStation 2 is that it played DVDs, and then of course the
Yeah.
3 was Blu-rays. But do you think
Well,
that would have made a difference?
yeah, well, that was where Sony was forward thinking, right?
Right.
And that's
Mhm.
and that again, this is where Microsoft made one of their mistakes too. So I kind of agree. I think it would have added value, and because we know that the PlayStation 2 largely took off because it was the cheapest DVD format at the time.
Yes.
That's what DVD people don't really look at them today and go, "Oh, it's cheap." But back then when PlayStation 2 was coming on, DVDs were still relatively new, and the medium wasn't proven. A lot of people were still watching VHS tapes.
Yeah.
And again, that was one of the cheapest entry platforms into the DVD format. And the same thing happened with Blu-ray versus the HD DVD format.
Mhm.
So my thing was, I applaud what Microsoft did with the DVD player, the HD DVD. But the problem was after Sony started to gain ground with PlayStation 3s
Mhm.
because they had the cheapest Blu-ray format.
Yeah, exactly.
Xbox should have just revamped the Xbox 360 and put the HD DVD in as their primary drive. They should have just
Yeah.
got rid of it as an add-on and gave you the option to buy it as a sole unit and made that their proprietary distribution. And then I think the HD DVD format would have given the Blu-ray a hell of a run for its money.
Right.
But that wasn't to be. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, that's what pushed Blu-rays forward. Believe it or
Mhm.
not, that was really the push for Blu-ray. And that's why PlayStation also got a leg up in sales on PS3. If it wasn't for that Blu-ray, the PlayStation 3s might have never have been as popular as they were. And
Oh,
for
yeah.
looking at the Xbox, it's like anything. Anytime you have to add that word, the add on, and you
Mhm.
have to spend more money outside of what you've already spent, it's always a hard sell,
It
especially
is.
when you got to look at a parent. Well, I want this, mom. How do you convince mom to go and spend another couple $100 on something that is not really necessary to the gaming experience, but you
Right.
just want it? That's where it gets tricky. And we know that right now, today's industry is largely, while we are the hardcore that do podcasts, today's industry, like it or not, is largely governed and run by the casual market. We see that
Mhm.
by the kind of games that are popular today. They're
Yep.
not games like the ones that we grew up on. They're games like free to play, games as service models. That's why like every kid under the sun knows what Fortnite is. But
Yep.
if you ask a kid, do you know what Gears of War is? Most of them would look at you like you got three heads. What? What's Gears of War?
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah, and
But
it
yeah,
makes
crazy
total
stuff.
sense. Oh, yeah. No, I know that I used to have people that come in, it was like, when the PlayStation Slim came out, and it was
Hmm.
literally as the same price or cheaper than the Blu-ray you could go into Walmart and buy,
Yeah.
and it was like, this does all this plus plays your Blu-rays,
Hmm.
and it was updatable. In other words, every they would like if there was a new quote unquote Blu-ray thing that they would
Yeah.
add, even the 3D Blu-ray was just a software update on the PlayStation,
Hmm.
and you get those goggles, and I
Yeah.
was like, it's amazing. I mean, the console that was like 4 years ago was just the first whatever Blu-ray, but then
Hmm.
it, because of the ability to update, it actually, man, it was still, I still have two of the Slims
Yeah.
in different rooms just because, hey, I need a Blu-ray player. Boop, you got one handy right there.
Yeah.
Even if I don't play games on the device anymore, but still, it's like I can't see getting rid of them because I couldn't replace them for what I would sell them for.
Yeah.
Even though
Exactly.
medium isn't quite what it used to be, but I have a PlayStation 5. I have two of the new Xboxes, Series X and S.
Yeah, like
Uh,
well, when I buy movies now, I never buy a DVD anymore. Like I just can't stand the grainy picture. It's just I'm sorry, anything sub 720
yep,
is not a is not a good look, especially with today's HD TVs. It just looks terrible.
yep. No, I'm right there with you. I agree with you on that
But the blue
100%.
that's the thing though. The DVD format is still around after all
Hmm.
these years and being wholly like totally inferior. And it
Hmm.
drives me batty, right? Because
Yeah,
we're always seeing the game industry gonna getting phased out from a physical standpoint. But yet DVD seems to continue to thrive. And I'm like, why? Why is anybody still buying this crap?
yep,
Everybody's buying 4K TVs, and you guys are still watching sub 1080p content, whether it's through your digital medium or on a
yeah.
DVD format. I'm like, are you guys really that cheap that you want to sacrifice? Because that's all you buy them because they're
Yep.
cheap. Well, you can get like 4 DVDs for the price of a Blu-ray, etc. But I just can't do it. I'm sorry, I'm that
No,
much of
I'm
a
with you.
techie that I just can't go cheap just because it's cheap. Like,
Right. Now there are some TVs that upscale and that actually do a good job to where it still looks better
decent,
than it was
yeah,
if it was just straight HD. But like if you have a 4K and you
yeah.
play it in 4K on 4K, oh my gosh, yeah, this is like you just want to reach in and touch the water.
Same reason I still buy CDs with music because the no loss of audio compression. Whereas if you
Exactly.
go on streaming services, stuff like doesn't sound the same. It's just sometimes it's good, but sometimes you get the crackling and stuff stops. And like I still have a lot of reservations about the digital medium
Yeah.
and how it's distributed. Um, I mean, the fact that LPs are coming back. I mean, records.
Yep.
What's that all about? But yet people get mad at me when
Nostalgia.
I'm saying like we need to keep physical games around for a reason.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree with you. I love it. I've got a tons of games, but I do find myself more and more, oh, well, it's digital.
convenience,
So,
and I
yeah,
get it.
yep.
Convenience, not a problem. I've never had an issue with why people buy digital games. My
Mhm.
issues always become now that because you choose to do things your way doesn't mean that I can't do it mine.
Right. Right. You should still
Because
be
that's what I see is when I see the store space at the store level shrinking and I no longer have options available. And people always say options are great. It's great when you have lots for you, but if I have nothing,
right.
I'm screwed. And I see this all the time. I go in my favorite platform, guys, Xbox, and I walk into my local stores. And guess what happens to me now 9 out of 10 times? If I want the copy for Xbox, unless I pre ordered it, they never have any. They got them
Yeah.
on PlayStation, but I'm like, I don't want it on PlayStation. I've literally walked into GameStop, and the guy goes, "You sure you don't want it on the PlayStation?" And I'm like, "No, I asked for the Xbox one. Like that's why I asked you for it." It's like
Yeah.
dumbass.
Yep.
I want it on Xbox. That's my preferred platform. I normally buy it there, but you're giving me no option. Then people say, "Well, then you got to go online. You can get it on Amazon." Yeah, but that means I got to wait, and then I got to like there's so many other things that just drive me up the wall, like you know what I
Yeah.
mean. But anyway, I'm off on a completely weird tangent here.
No, no, not at all. Not bad. But I do agree with you. The convenience of walking into a store, buying what you want and getting what you want, going home and playing it is sometimes hit or miss. Some stores, you get it. Some stores they don't. So
The
it's
biggest thing that
unfortunately.
bugs me
What's that?
is watching all you guys when you download it on day one with Game Pass or wherever you're getting it, and you get it
Yeah.
day one, and you've already got it installed, ready to go when it launches.
Yep.
Where I'm the guy that has to wait the next morning for the store to open up, go grab my copy, run home, do my 40 gig update, install the game, another update, and then we go. So like 3 hours later, everybody's like 5 levels in, and I'm like, I'm just starting, bro.
Yeah. Or some
That's
people
that part.
even go to was it they'll have a sub account where they can download it from New Zealand to get it early. Rand
Yeah,
talking about the other
kudos to
day. I was like, that's
GameStop on
crazy.
that. That's one thing that at least I applaud them for the last couple of years because they were aware of this. So when they're doing
Hmm.
like say the launches, they
Hmm.
normally would let you pick them up like the day before,
Yeah.
so that you'd have your copy when it legitimately launches.
Yeah.
Especially
That
it was
was
like midnight
convenient.
if they were doing a midnight launch, which I know are very rare these days. But
Right.
like you'd later be able to pick up your game at like 7 or 8 p.m. But they give them to you early because they knew that you would be at that disadvantage, right?
Hmm. Yep. No, I'm with you. I think it's cool, but it doesn't. Not every title's like that, unfortunately. And it's sometimes
No.
it's up to the I guess the manufacturer or the game company
Yeah.
themselves as to whether they want to give you that option to pick them up
Very few,
early.
yeah, very few want to do that anymore. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So let's talk about your I guess transition into you got into podcasting. Obviously, you've been doing this a long time.
Very
But
long
what
time.
how did you get started? What was your what was your first idea about, how did it coax you in?
Yeah, it's interesting. This is always one of my favorite questions because it is an interesting story. As I said at the top of your show, like how gaming gets a lot of disrespect.
Hmm.
I felt very alone, with gaming. I always felt like, because when I grew up, I was literally probably the most hardcore gamer in my community. Like I was the kid who owned all the systems, had all the games.
Hmm.
That's what my mother and my father, like, they knew that was one of my passions, something I loved a lot. So they invested in that and they gave me games to play. Other families weren't maybe so fortunate, or perhaps for whatever reason. But so like I said, I've always been like a diehard. So growing up, and even just a few years ago, like I said, I felt like, man, God, I got no friends that understand this medium like I do. I can't talk to anybody. It's like if I bring something, you know what I mean? Like you can talk about sports, but I had no
Yeah.
friends that are into gaming like they were into sports per se.
Hmm.
So I always felt like, well, I could tell you about this cool game that's coming up, but they're going to look at me like, whatever, pal.
Right.
So anyway, I don't know. It's just, coming into the dawn of the YouTube and stuff. And I started watching some stuff, and I don't know how it even came up, but at one point, then I watched this. I stumbled across a podcast, and it was called Big Gamers Small Talk. And it may have a few industry names that maybe some people don't like or what have you, but that's irrelevant. That people recognize, like Mooch TV, The Crap Gamer, Next Gen 720. They were just a couple of guys that were on this podcast. And they were talking games. And of course, at the time, they were largely sort of Xbox centric, certainly pushing more for that brand. And I just fell in love with what they were doing and the way they were talking and the information they're putting out. And I was like, finally, guys I can relate to, and guys that are funny, and, or guys that could speak really well. And Crap Gamer at the time, I mean, he was probably putting out like 4 videos a day. Like I said, love the guy, hate the guy, whatever you want to think about him. These are the guys that influenced me to kind of go, I think I could do this. And I was still working at the radio station. And, of course, I showed up in the chats and I sent out a feeler to Mooch. And I said, Mooch, I work in radio. I love what you guys are doing. I love this podcast. And if you're ever, because he was doing another show at the time too called Crossfire, which he still does on Friday evenings. And I said, if there's a possibility I could ever be a guest, I'd love to jump on. And at some point, yeah, he gave me that shot. He invited me to come on his podcast, and with saying it right off the bat, he knew that, okay, this Newf Nukem guy, not only can he talk on a microphone, but he is knowledgeable about gaming. He comes from the old school background, and he said, you know what, man, if you start your own channel kind of deal, like, you got a bit of a future in this if you want to go for it. And and then I started becoming a podcast member on various podcasts. And my first real breakthrough then came from there. It was a little podcast. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It was called God, I don't know why I always um, the Console Corner. Have you ever heard of it? You can look it up. If you go look it up, it's called the Console
Okay.
Corner. And there's some really good people from the community who ran that. And one was Gamers Know Best, or GKB as we call him. And his wife at the time was She-Wolf. And they had another lady on there, Lady Foxfire. You might know of her. She's a fantastic person. And from there, they did this podcast, and they had a few different other people on there. And they had this, it was really interesting because it was a really cool podcast. And they had this vote system. So they were looking for a new panel member, and they had like people from the chat come on and put their names forward that they were interested in the show. And then they decided they were going to have sort of us going up against each other, like a competition. And they'd bring one of us on, actually to bring a couple of us on, and we talk about topics, and then they let the community vote on who they liked. So after 3 or 4 rounds of this, apparently I won with a unanimous vote. I beat everybody out. So
Nice.
That's how I became a panel member. And it was really cool because I got a great vote of confidence from the community, and I ended up on their show as a permanent member. And I kind of basically left them sort of, it was a little bit of a, people know me, know quite well that my humor can be some people love my humor, some people don't. I can be very, I guess, I don't know, immature or adult, whatever you want to call it. But my humor can be pretty out there sometimes, a little rough for certain podcasts, depending on your audience. And I think, I wanted to take things a little differently. They always were trying to hold me back, especially as their channel was growing and they were starting to
Right.
get guys coming in on their podcasts, like guys like industry guys like Mike Ibarra.
Oh,
And
wow.
like they like She Wolf was friends with Mike Ibarra, and he would come on and different things. Like we'd have some pretty good names on there, and they were all familiar with the podcast. So like you kind of get told like to tone it back and do this or do that and something else. And the podcast started to gradually change, and I just felt like, yeah, this is not the place for me anymore.
Hmm.
If I can't be Newf Nukem, then I just can't be nobody, because what you
Right.
see is what you get. So I left that podcast, and that kind of inspired me to start my own. And then I started a whole bunch, and I did a whole bunch of things on my channel. If you go way back to the early days, I did something called Spit Bits with Newf Nukem and Goofing Around with Newf and a whole bunch of different ones.
Cool.
Then I did one with Jago Kukin and a few of those guys, Invader Gaming. You might know some of them. And what's it called? The Game Dosage podcast, which was quite good and was received quite well. And it was going great up until Attack the Glitcher, who was the host at the time. I don't know. He was just going through a rough phase in his life, and he was
Right.
missing the podcast all the time. And like when your host is not there, and your host is like, "Hey, we're going to do a podcast on Tuesday night," and then your host never shows up, and
Right.
it's last minute all the time. And it got to the point where it became a running joke. Now, God bless the Tactic Glitcher, really great human, nothing with the world of him, but like you could feel the writing was on the wall. And like every week we're like, so who's hosting the show? Because Glitcher's not here again. We started like joking, like, well, he's not here again this week. Something else came up. His work came up. Something came up.
Hmm.
So anyway, that podcast kind of went the way of the dodo. And then I branched off into other things. And then again, eventually I moved into something called Gaming After Dark. And that became my signature, my calling card, where I could be myself. And I
Hmm.
had some incredible people, including a lady by the name of Primal Eve, who is still a good friend of mine in the community. She doesn't get to game or podcast anymore. She get games every now and then. I see her online, but she doesn't podcast
Hmm.
anymore. But it was me and her. We started the podcast together, and I thought it was great. Had a lady of color, and again, being a lady, which we need more of in this community.
Oh, yeah.
It was awesome, and she had the kind of humor that fitted me. Like we fit together really well,
Nice.
and we hit it off. And then we added Titan Drago to the fold.
Hmm.
Anybody knows Titan Drago? Great guy. We had a ton of fun there, and the three of us were going. And then Primal had to leave, and shortly after Primal left, and I was the first guy to give the middle-aged game guy his break into this business.
Mag. Yep.
Mag was always in my chats. He was coming out to Gaming After Dark, loved the show, thought the world of what I was doing, liked the humor and everything. And he said, "Hey man, like I'd like to come on." And I said, "You know what, Mag, I'm going to get you on some week." And it's funny enough, so I invite him on the show. He comes on, he hits it off, and right away I knew, like, okay, this guy's got something. He's got
Yeah.
presence. He's got charisma. He can talk the walk, right, or walk the
Hmm.
talk.
Yep.
And before I even had the chance to extend an invitation to him, Mr. Boomstick XL had him on his podcast and basically invite him to be a panel member on Primetime Gaming. And a week later, I said, "Well, Mag, if you're not too busy, I'd like to have you as a permanent member on Gaming After Dark with us." And sure enough, he came in and he fit in like a glove. And then, like I said, after Eve left, it was me, Mag, and Titan, and we had a chemistry that we'll never have again.
Right.
Was simply unmatched by many podcasts. And I stick by that. I've never had two guys that came on a podcast with me that I gelled so well with. They had this great chemistry where
Hmm.
we fed off each other and it just gelled well. And you know what I'm talking about, Dave.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you can have all these guys on your panel, but everybody either sounds like an echo chamber, or they have very similar voices, or they just sound like they're about as interested in watching paint dry. Like, I'm sorry, you can be the most knowledgeable dude in the world, but if you're going to come on a podcast and you have the same monotone drive the whole way through,
Right.
and people say, "Well, I can do a podcast," anybody can, yeah. But that's why you have certain people in radio and you don't have certain people in radio, because, yeah, lots of people think they can do it, but they can't. The bottom line is, if you're not interesting, nobody's going to stick around, okay?
Right.
And people can't get that through their head because, oh, you're not being paid to this. But look, in the reality world, if you went in with the same way you do a podcast, nobody would hire you. Fact, okay?
Right.
So that's why you have guys on radio, and you got some shitty ones on radio too, and you kind of go, what were they thinking when they hired this person? Because
Right.
that person's either got the most crappiest voice in the world, and you don't all have to sound like Walter Cronkite when you're
Right.
doing radio. You don't always have to have the big booming voice. My voice is not amazingly radio, but it's about delivery,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's about delivery. It's about having some enthusiasm. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got a great product, but you're like, yeah, this great game came out this week. Did you guys play it? That don't sound like you're interested. But anyway, I'm off on a tangent. Anyway,
That's
that's
all
kind
right.
of the nutshell.
Yeah.
Gaming After Dark recently shut it down because I did bring in some new people and I just wasn't feeling the vibe. And people know I took about over half a year away from podcasting, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Try to stay away from Twitter a little bit as well because it was getting so toxic and so whatever. And the break did me well. I got a chance to get out and ride my motorcycle a lot in the past
Nice.
2 summers, which became my new passion hobby now at 46 years old. Finally getting into motorcycling, absolutely loving it. And that's it. So Gaming After Dark shut down, but I still continued Good Morning Xbox. I want to shout out to my amazing panel, if you don't mind.
Go right
Eternal
ahead.
Shaddai, who just left us today. It was his last show, at least for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Cool Cat Terry, Scrub Nurse, and Cerebral Paul and Axel 1324. All amazing people. Almost all of these people, with the exception of like Scrub Nurse, I think made his first appearance on my podcast. Eternal Shaddai got his first appearance on my podcast. Like, I've given so many people their first opportunities, much like Mooch gave me mine, and they've branched out and done bigger, better things. Like Scrub Nurse, Mag, Eternal Shaddai, Axel, and Axel runs a great little show now called the Iconic Video Games Podcast on Friday nights.
Mm-hmm.
And shout out to lots of great people too who supported me along the way. Like, you can't do this by yourself. People say, you do need the support. You need people that can back you up.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like Graphic God, amazing guy, very talented. He's done a lot of work for a lot of us here and done a lot of my graphics and stuff like that. And I remember the first time he did my graphics, it was like a pro bono. Like, he did it. He just did this for me out of the kindness of his heart. And it transpired from there. And then I paid him for work thereafter. But
Nice.
He's just a good Canadian guy from the East Coast like myself.
Mm-hmm.
And there you have it in a nutshell.
Yeah. So everybody to know, so what time does the Good Morning Xbox, what time does that come on? And usually, I guess, what does it usually cover? You don't mind.
So Good Morning Xbox, it's unlike Gaming After Dark, which is largely focused on multi-platforms, and it was an adult-centric podcast where I normally would say, like, if you're under 18, maybe this is not the best place for you, because we did have sometimes topics or opinions got a little bit risky or all that sort of stuff. But Gaming After Good Morning Xbox is largely based around Xbox, but from time to time we do branch out into other topics. But we try to keep it Xbox. We try to keep it as positive as we can. We're trying to keep it upbeat.
That is, for sure.
People deal with enough negativity on a day-to-day basis. I'm not into clickbait shit. I don't, none of that kind of stuff. It's just you get what you see. But we talk about Xbox. We got great stuff because, like I said, the one thing we thrived on there was having a very diverse panel. Right, we got guys who represent the Hispanic community.
Yep.
A gentleman who represents the African American community. We got a lady on the panel who can, who's also a small-time indie dev herself. And she loves indie games, and she brings that experience, and she brings the female perspective in.
Yep.
And then you got Cerebral Paul, who I love because he tells it like it is. He's straightforward, but he's a funny guy. He's very witty, and he can speak from the accessibility standpoint, which is something that industry's fighting for right now. And he's been able to convey this in a lot of ways and tell people, like for him, he's all about adding modes to games, like easy modes for some of those Dark Souls style games. Why? Because his dexterity, because of his cerebral palsy, is not there. And he would love to play these games, and he would like to complete the games, but he can't because of his his dexterity in his hands. So he thinks it should be there, but of course he gets backlash and, well, that it's going to ruin the game for everybody because but like, you have to understand where and that's the thing, nobody can because they're not in his shoes. But you never know. We're all standing up straight today. One of us could be crippled or paralyzed tomorrow. How would you feel then if you gotta walk, or should I say roll a mile in his shoes? Think about that, right?
Yeah.
People are so about themselves and what they want. They never think about what somebody else may need or want. And Microsoft, obviously, again, forward-thinking company, innovative as heck.
Yes.
Leading the industry in most ways, not only cloud, but I mean, that adaptive controller was huge for the industry. Now other people are starting to try to copy that. this sort of stuff. But yeah, no, Good Morning Xbox, great little podcast. I highly think that if you like Xbox, if you like diversity in your opinions, and just a fun little show, this is a good show to come out. It's 9 a.m. Eastern on my YouTube channel, and that would be 7 a.m. Mountain Time. So I'm up nice and early for that one. And we do it every Sunday, and it's an easy channel to find. Just Newf Nukem. I'm Newf Nukem pretty much everywhere. Except on PlayStation, I'm Newf Nukem 76 because I forgot all my account shit for my other one, and couldn't get back in. So yeah, if you see Newf Nukem with no spaces, no numbers, that's still my old account. I just can't remember how the hell to get in there.
That's so funny. Yeah. I know people that happened to them before too. And plus too, just so everybody knows that I will have the links to your Twitter and also to your YouTube channel and all of the ways they can get a hold of you. I'll have that in the description below, which will of course be on which is what most people are watching now, which is YouTube, but it'll also be on iTunes, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Those links will also be there as well. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out to Newf and to watch his shows. The one thing, because I watched it today before you came on.
Right, thank you.
No worries, dude. Good show, good panel, and the thing I like about it is your panel. Each member of your panel can hold their own. You know what I mean? They have a good starting place, so they have a good perspective, and it's an interesting show. You know, sometimes they have different perspectives, which is good. Always getting the diversity, and then sometimes it's you guys are all like, "Whoo!" right in on a topic, and that's great. I think it's a good show, and everybody should check it out.
Well, like I said, Dave, I love gaming. I'm a multi-platform owner. I've got the Switch, I got a PS5, I got Xbox. I've always had all the consoles. I do wear the green banner a little more because that's my preference. And everybody needs to know in life we all have preferences.
Yes.
Doesn't matter. Sports, cars, music, women, whatever it is, we have preferences, right? It's no different in gaming. But the thing is, the gaming community can't dissensuate, what's what. They hear what they want to hear. So I notice if I talk a little bit about PlayStation, I give them a little bit props here and there. Oh, Newf Nukem's got over to the dark side. He's a pony. I hate this crap. Like it's so stupid. It's like, do you guys do you follow my timeline or watch my videos? If you notice or you watch, again, I don't clickbait, and I give props where it's due. I praise stuff all the time. I retweet stuff all the time. I know lots of people that claim they're multi-platform owners in this community and they're neutrals and they love all gaming, but I never see them tweet anything from the PlayStation.
Right.
They say they play it. They say they own one, but if a game comes out, they never talk about it. They never tweet it. They never share it. And then certainly if I put something that PlayStation centric, like, oh, this game is freaking amazing, no retweets, no likes, no nothing. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'll get it from the guys who deem themselves as PlayStation centric. They'll like it. But the Xbox, and it goes back and forth. It's from both sides, but it's just this freaking level of immaturity. And people say I'm immature, but they need to look in the mirror, man, because honestly, just so many people need a damn shake. But that's another topic altogether. The toxicity of gaming is on another level, and it's largely because, again, of social media platforms. And there's a lot of jealousy, and there's a lot of backbiting, and there's a lot of crap in this community too that we could go on about all day. You're going to see it now. You're going to see it tomorrow. It's not going away. Some people hide it better than others, but it's there.
Right, I agree with you 100%. And plus, with the advent of Twitter and social media like that, it's a lot easier for some people to be the keyboard cowboys, and because they don't feel like there's they don't think about somebody's either feelings that they're hurting or they just want to be. Some people unfortunately just want to be mean.
They hear what they want to hear. People still say Newf Nukem, he hates Game Pass. Find where I've ever said I hate Game Pass. Please show me the evidence. I do not hate Game Pass. I've never hated. I've owned it on 2 different occasions. I played the games. I said Game Pass is amazing. I love what they're doing. It's not for me, however. And the other side of the coin, I've always said, is because Game Pass is moving our industry a little further ahead. Now, this might be where the industry goes anyway, but they are pushing it a little harder, right? Because that's the medium that is working for Microsoft. Sony is only doing what they're doing because they're getting dragged into it, right?
Right. Kicking and screaming, seems like.
That's right. Like, Sony sees the money that Microsoft is making. So they like to tout numbers whenever possible, but
Yeah.
they see the money that Microsoft's putting up. They see the numbers and they want to get into it, but that's not what they want. Like, if Sony could do things the absolute traditional way,
Mm-hmm.
they would totally be doing, nothing would change. But at some point, like you say, it's you either adapt or you sink,
Yeah.
whether that's slowly or you try to jump in and you try to go a little too far ahead of the curve, like Google and Stadia,
Yep.
where you kind of, you're trying to take an idea that's starting to gain some ground, but you push it on people and you don't do it the right way. Google thought this was going to be easy for them. They thought that
Right.
they were going to jump into the market with this controller and everybody would buy one because it hooks up to the TV and you're going to cloud stream everything. But look, anybody can tell you, without great games, without exclusive games, without stuff you can only find in your platform, they were going to win people over with Assassin's Creed and stuff like that, where you could already play them on PlayStation and Xbox, established platforms,
Right.
and not have to do it streaming. Do it natively. Download it to your hard drive. This is like, I don't know, for a company that has as much money and as smart of people as you think they are over there, how they could botch something so badly. Like, again, maybe it was ahead of the curve. We see this all the time. Sometimes if you're too late, you get out. Sometimes if you jump in too early, you're out. But it's always a test, and you got to have the money and you got to have the resources to back it. Xbox Live didn't become huge overnight. It took Microsoft since 2001, 2000. Well, what was it? Xbox Live came around 2003, 2004, essentially.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Been a
it
long
took
time.
them that time. Like they what if they grandfathered it in? It just edged its way along. It improved gradually over time until it got where it is today. And people don't understand that. They just think you can walk in and build it and it magically is going to be successful. That's not how it works.
Yeah. Like I was saying too, like a new gamer today, they can't appreciate where we came from because it's already there.
No,
Or
go
it's
back
already
and use
built
those
up
old
and
shitty
done.
Bluetooth microphones, for example. Go back to the early days of party chats. Go back to any of that stuff, and you're like,
Goodness.
holy.
Yep.
And yet here's Nintendo over there, somehow magically still can't get with the times. It blows my mind. Nintendo, one of the most successful platforms on the planet,
Yep.
and still has worse online than the original Xbox. The fact that I need a security social insurance number to actually add a friend to my friends list tells you all you need to know.
Yep.
Come on, make it one click and done. But they're too worried that some little kid is gonna get offended because Mr. Brutus over there said the F word.
Yeah. It's sometimes a little over precautious. I agree with that for sure. Well, Newf, as we start to wrap things up, I
Sure.
do always like to get to a question that I kind of ask everybody.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this: you can actually have more than one answer because almost everybody gets me more than one. That's fine.
Sure.
So basically, from knowing a game that's coming out, something that everybody knows about, nothing that's like whatever mythical or whatever. But what is your most anticipated games coming out that's not out yet?
Well, it's
You're looking forward to the most.
Right behind me, actually, on this side right here.
Yeah.
Over here. Gears. Anything that has Gears of War in it, except for Gears Tactics. I'm not an RTS guy, so I didn't buy that one.
Right.
But Gears 6. I mean, we know it's going to come eventually. It has to. We're actually hearing talks that the coalition may have scrapped some passion projects or something to straight work on Gears 6. Okay.
That's your big one,
yeah. Gears of War, man. It's the reason that pulled me back into gaming. I was almost out. I was at the point where I almost had given up on gaming. I was getting a little disillusioned with some of the crap we were getting at the time, and it was getting expensive. And the 360 was coming around, and I wasn't quite convinced that this next gen of consoles at the time was right for me. Coming off all the money I spent on PlayStation 2 and the Xbox, and sort of getting burned a little bit with Xbox. Because they kind of wrapped up the original Xbox a little prematurely. It's like, yeah, we're done with this one. We're moving on. And 360, right? But I saw this game on a magazine. Picture Marcus Phoenix, Unreal Engine. And I was like, holy hell. I said, I don't know what this game is, but I tell you, I said, if this game plays like it looks, I am sold. And when I saw videos of that game running for the first time, my jaw was on the floor. And I said, wow, now this is what I'm paying money for. You know what I mean? Like we don't get a lot of those experiences anymore when you see a game that literally just leaves you speechless. Then, of course, the amazing commercials and advertising, the whole Mad World and
Oh yeah.
and that sort of stuff. And then I play this game, and I'm playing it with my buddies for the first time, co-op, going through that campaign with the krill and the dark and the, oh my god, the larger like characters and the locusts coming through the ground. There was nothing like it out there. It was like, this game is freaking incredible. And everybody that walked into my house and played it were like, holy I got to get myself an Xbox. This is nuts. What is this game? And of course, 2 and 3, so on and so forth, the story and the DOM and everything else, and start reading the books. Like, it became a cultural phenomenon. And of course, we all know how it kind of went off the rails after 3. I don't want to get into that conundrum, but it needs to bring it back to what made Gears great first. It was a great story, but better all was the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is where they tried to, for whatever reason, they got away from Marcus Phoenix. They decided to tell this different story. And of course, I think the enemies were lacking. I didn't like the Lambent like I liked the Locust. They just started getting wacky. They didn't have a great enemy character in there that really resonated the way that Rom did in the first game. Mirror wasn't bad. But, the game was sort of taking that, even the multiplayer went from being straightforward and visceral to kind of getting wacky. It started to look like Call of Duty. When you start getting pink skins on your guns and all this flashy rainbow colored crap in the game, and like, what are we doing here? Is this Gears of War, or is this a freaking circus? You know what I mean? Like, funny. I get it. You're trying to sell shit to people, but you're trying to sell shit to people that didn't need it to begin with. Because anybody who loves Gears, who's hardcore, okay, doesn't need or doesn't ask for that crap. Yeah. I don't need pink guns. I don't need characters with giant wigs on and all the rest of that crap. Just give me the game. I would just play it for the rawness. The Lancer speaks for itself. There's no other weapon in many games that are as raw as the Lancer, and cutting through people right down the middle is still one of the greatest feelings. When you cut into that cutscene of Gears and down to the middle, and those headshots with that, yes. Like I said, I could go on about Gears. I love Gears. People might look at my gamer scores and say, well, he doesn't have all this. No, I played every Gears. I've been reading the books. There are harder core guys than me. I get it. I know people that got thousands of hours into Horde mode and stuff. I just don't get enough time to play, but it doesn't make me any less of a Gears fan. But anything Gears related, man, bring it back to Marcus a little bit more this time. Get away from Kate and JD. They were boring, man. I'm sorry. They're just boring. They just didn't have that oomph factor. Bring back Coltrane, with the swagger. Woo, baby. You know what I mean? The Coltrane up in here. The stuff that you said between Dom and those guys and Baird, the wittiness. That's what the game kind of missed. Yeah. The 5th game brought it back around, especially that the DLC. The DLC was phenomenal. And they had better characters. But yeah, that's where we are, man. So it's Gears of War. There's 100 other games, but anytime I hear the word Gears, my ears perk up, and I want them to go back. I know it's not happening, but go back to the title, Gears of War. Yes. Maybe they didn't want the acronym to be associated with God of War because they both are GOWs. Right. But I like the war part because it identified the game. Yes. Right? Remember we talk about visceral? You take the war part out. What is Gears? That sounds like a car racing game to me. Yeah. Gears of War is like, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah. I know we always shorten it as gamer fans. We shorten it up, and I get it, but still on your packaging, in your advertising, Gears of War. Yep. Gears of War 6 would be nice. Yep. And don't go, sorry, Tim Dog, but no survival horror bull crap. Gears of War is an action game. It was always an action game. It had horror elements in the first game, especially, but don't take it down that road. I don't want Resident Evil Gears. I don't want to manage my inventory so I can kill like one enemy up close and anyway, you can tell I'm passionate, right? Exactly. It looks like you want a hardcore Gears game. Oh, bro, I'm telling you, I got Gears of War underwear. It doesn't get more hardcore than that. Newf Nukem and Gears of War underoos. I like it. That's right. Now that's my jam, man. Like, that's the game. Like I said, it saved me. It saved my gaming. If it wasn't for Gears, I don't know if I'd be gaming today, and that's a fact. It really was that big of a deal for me when it came out. It revolutionized things. I even dumped a girl over Gears of War. Holy crap! Wow. I'm not kidding. I brought this girl out from Newfoundland. She was with me for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and she sort of came out right in a crap storm when Gears dropped, the first Gears. Yeah. And she did not want me playing X. It's one of those, when as soon as they hear the logo of the Xbox starting up, they're like, yeah, I thought we were doing something today. It's like, you've been sitting there for 5 hours. You never said a word until you heard the Xbox logo. And now you're like, we're going to be doing something. Yeah, you're going to be doing something, all right. So anyway, I sent her bag packing, let me tell you.
Oh, too funny.
So
Oh,
there you
goodness.
go.
There you
There's a
go.
little bit of Newf Nukem right there.
Newf, thank you so much for being on today, man. You've been a definite joy, man. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you being on. Appreciate the heritage and all your work that you've been in the community, and hope many continued success with Good Morning Xbox, and hopefully at some point, you'll get back in to the gaming after dark. That would be nice, but if not, that's okay too. It's its own legacy for sure. But Good Morning Xbox, I suggest everybody goes on. Like I said, the link will be below in the description. Click on that. Go to his channel. Not only hit the subscribe button, but make sure you hit the bell icon so you don't miss an episode. Good way to wake up on a Sunday morning is to kick back and talk about gaming, man.
Yeah.
It's great.
Well,
Again,
Dave,
Newf, thank you.
thank you so much, man. I appreciate knowing that, that as small as a YouTuber, influencer, whatever you like to call us these days,
Mhm.
that, you at least recognize that I've been in the community for a while, and
Oh, yeah.
that makes me feel it really, when you sent the invitation, that's why I don't turn these things down, because I remember where I started, where I am, and I'm very grateful for everything, grateful for all the opportunities.
Mhm.
You know what? That's the one thing we all have in common. It's no matter how big our channels get, we all start in the same exact place. We all start with one,
Yep.
and then we continue to grow. And you can't do it without the community. It's not easy. I tell people that want to get into this racket, this YouTubing stuff, is look, do it for the love of it. Don't for the money. If the money
Right.
comes, that's great. Take it and run with it.
Yep.
But do it for the love of it, because if you're not passionate about it, and if you can't have conversations like we just had about Gears of War, it's probably not the right place for you. And try to find a different avenue.
Yep.
Try to find what works for you. Right?
Yep.
Everybody has, as they call, a shtick.
Mhm.
Find what you're good at. Find topics you feel comfortable with talking about. And if you are going to bring in a panel, don't necessarily surround yourself with always like-minded people or the echo chamber people, but find yourself good people. Again, try to find someone that you gel with, that
Mhm.
you can have a respectful argument with,
Yep.
without throwing insults and losing your friendships over, because
Right.
sometimes it does get that freaking heated. It's crazy, but it does.
Mhm.
And just be yourself and go for it. And right now it's a crowded space. There is no good time zone because everybody's got podcasts everywhere. At
Yep.
some point, you just got to go, you know what? I'm just doing it. I'm going
Pull
to
the
pick a
trigger.
time that works for me and
Yep.
let the chips fall where they may. Because if you're going to try to tiptoe and avoid everybody, you might as well, you know what? You might as well just stop, because there
Right.
are that many. When I started, there was a few, and now there are, I can't even count them all. And I wish I
Lots.
could
Yep.
support everyone. I wish I could watch them all religiously. But as I
Mhm.
said to the guys last night in my chat, I said, if I did that, I wouldn't game at all. I'd just be watching podcasts all day long,
Yep.
because, everybody's podcasts too, they're like 2 hours, 3 hours. Some guys are doing like 4 or 5 a week now.
Yeah.
How do you keep up with that? They can't even, I don't even know how they keep up with that. I mean, it's one thing to just do one or two, but when you got multiple, my respect goes out to you wholeheartedly, because
Yeah.
anybody that will know, this is not as easy as it looks,
Oh, no.
especially for you guys like you, Dave, and everybody else who puts a lot of production into their shows. Is one thing that I never really got into because I never had the time. And I feel that sometimes it's a time
Just about
thing,
the
and,
games, man.
it's a tech thing. I got a
Yeah.
crappy PC that barely runs the internet as it is, let alone all these graphics and programs. This thing would be crashing every 5 seconds. I guess I'll have to invest in a better one of these days. But until my channel gets to the point where I feel it's worth that, that investment, then
Right.
yeah. But anyway, I'm sorry to take up more of your time. Hopefully you won't have
Oh,
too many
no.
edits. You guys know where to find me. It's Newf Nukem pretty much everywhere, baby.
Fantastic. No
Oh, and I'll
edits at
put
all,
out there
man. Just go
one more
straight.
thing. A
Yes,
lot
go
of
ahead.
people also know me for all the impressions I do. I think that's been one of the things that kind of, made me sort of known.
Mhm.
People say I have one of the best Arnold Schwarzenegger impressions out there, and I do many other voices. And of course, I created cast of characters for my shows that are dearly missed. I hear it from people all the time. A guy called Cletus Dunmore and
Nice.
Safe House Sam,
Yeah.
and and people miss, and I miss doing them, as tough as they were, and being able to come up with those conversations with those characters on the top of my head was not always easy. Some weeks I killed it, some weeks it was like, yeah, you got to show you like, oh boy. But
Well,
it's all part of the journey.
it is. It is a lot of fun, and radio definitely gave you the opportunity, I'm sure, to be able to create a lot of characters and stuff too. It's fun. It's going to feel. Newf, thank you so much for being here, buddy. I really appreciate it. Sir, you have a great day. And thank you, everybody, for joining us here at Outbreak Gamers.
Game over.